Thankfully, I've not had to brush up with HR too much in my professional career, but I have had the occasional run in, and I find these sort of yearly reviews and the sort of negative overtones and the, in fact, I find any form uh, of review and a request for statements from people or for people, student statements and so on. They all seem to me, you've got to fit into that coded language where you're being critical, but not too critical. And it seems to me to be a very duplicitous and rather unpleasant activity. And frankly, I don't think it gets much better when people start parading their CVs around. The less I say about what I've done in the past, the better, frankly. And I was teaching somebody the other day, and they seemed surprised when I mentioned goats, and they guffawed a bit. What would you know about goats? And I said, well, I used to look after goats, and this seemed unbelievable to them. I must say, I was rather entertained that there was somebody in the world who didn't know that I'd been a goat herder. And I was quite relieved, and I was able to tell him the stories about looking after goats and about how goats make specific and individual noises, not necessarily from the front, but you could always tell which goat was coming towards you out of your tribe. A group of goats is called a tribe of goats. Out of your group, out of your tribe of 100 goats, I was able to identify each one by name and by noise, and that gave me a lot of pleasure. Anyway, there's a new way of assessing people, and it's called RBS. It's got nothing to do with the Royal Bank of Scotland. And RBS exercises your reflected best self. And you're supposed to send off messages to your family and your friends and colleagues and get them all to say, what is the best version of you? Can you tell me a story about you? It's the sort of thing that people probably would be manufacturing after you've died. So this is like performing an obituary in advance, and I suppose get these things out of the way as well. Um, and I was asked for one of these from somebody who was doing who I think was doing one of these RBS things, and they wrote to me and asked me if I could write something, and I thought, well, this is absurd. So I told a little story about what this person was like years and years ago, and it seemed, I hope it's sort of ego boosting and not too deflating, but it's a new way of assessing people. The problem is that it's an additional way of assessing people. They're still going to have to go through that negative process of how would you imagine your career in a few years' time? Somebody asked me that just after I just had cancer, and I'd got a job in a school, and somebody then said, "It's time for your career review. What are you going to? How would you see yourself in 5 years' time?" And I said, "Well, possibly alive, possibly not. How is your career development?" I have no career development. I'm over 60 and I really don't care. I'm just happy to be here and pottering around. And if you want me to develop any further, I'll just leave. I thought it was a ridiculous question, utterly ridiculous. And as if that was my major focus in life as well. And then I think the same person said to me, "Oh, I gather you do a bit of drawing as a hobby." I said, "No, my hobby is teaching. Drawing is what I live for. Animation is what I live for. My hobby is teaching." In fact, everything is just a sort of entertainment. I teach as entertainment. I do YouTube as entertainment. I draw for entertainment. I don't consider myself Leonardo da Vinci, but I do consider myself to be significantly better than a lot of the scribblers who appear, um, well, in park corners. But and I'm interested in that art form. I'm interested in whether or not it's possible to communicate with animation in a serious way, and I think it is. And at the moment, I'm looking particularly at the relationship between music and movement, and if you go back to the early years of Disney, Mickey Mouse was moving very much on the beat. And that seems to me to be slightly boring when you've got almost at exactly the same time Fred Astaire moving off the beat, and that sort of syncopated rhythm was what he did, and then you've got Mickey Mouse doing everything on the beat, and it's dull. Can you can you recognize that your character on screen is another instrument in the orchestra of life? Anyway, um, the RBS initiative comes from a positive organizational scholarship program which said that people are going to feel better about themselves if you say something positive. Well, of course they are. But if you then, if then at the other end of the year you're going to drag up all the negatives, what is the point? Um, and what really is the point anyway in trying to get people to be constantly trying to look for new jobs in their career if they're already doing the job they've got well. Um, and it seems to me if they're not doing that job well, then they've been very badly appointed. The problem is not with the person, the problem is with the person who appointed them. The same sort of thing with Liz Truss. The problem isn't with Liz Truss, the problem is with the people who voted her into power in the first place and gave her the opportunity. The problem is with Tufton Street. The problem is with anybody who gives her a speaker or a microphone or an opportunity. Those opportunities should be removed. She's an embarrassment. There are times when people should just recognize that the person they've been promoting is not capable of doing that job. That's their fault, not her fault. We should have pity for Liz Truss, rather than condemn her. And certainly we shouldn't send her to any more exercises to try and develop her gestures, because those clearly are not going to develop any more than the sort of rudimentary marionette-like positions that she adopts, as if she's been studying thunderbirds. But I think given her present company in America, it's not thunderbirds that she's been studying, it's Trumpton, where everybody moves around like a little wooden object, exuding importance, like Mr. Trump himself. So a variety of feedback that you get from these RBS individuals who then send you a little paragraph. I've just written my little potted paragraph. I'm very proud of it. I've said some nice things, and I hope they're going to be of use. I was going to say I hope they've been efficacious, but I think I'm overusing that word. And I don't know. Will this be the source of brainstorming, of analysis? Will this initiate introspection and initiative? I have no idea. Will it lead to the positive dynamics that it's supposed to? I don't suppose the person who wrote to me and asked me for this thing had any idea that I'd actually spent any time studying this ridiculous exercise, but it tickles my fancy greatly to find that there are occasions when I know something about this rubbish, and I've already looked at it, and I've already been slightly dismissive of it, and I'm not likely to change my mind. I think although I'm dismissive of RBS exercise, I'm very, very positive about positive feedback. I think if you sit and watch people long enough, eventually they do something that is useful, positive, right, and then you just comment on that and you praise that, and all the bad things, in my experience, disappear, because eventually people realize that they're not getting them anywhere, and they just go. I have every hope, I earnestly hope, that if somebody were to sit down and watch Mr. Putin long enough, he would do something right. Just say, "Well done, Mr. Putin, for that," even if that's some sort of exhalation. I believe corpses exhale occasionally, or at least there are noises, not necessarily from the front. So I suppose Mr. Putin has become very much like a goat.